a lady came to our church, and her name was Ivy. And she wanted to come over to eat one night, and she kept bothering me about coming over to eat. So on a Thursday night, I invited Ivy over to our house to eat dinner. And I said, hey, we'll do this Thursday night. Ivy said, I can't make it because that's my dart night. So I said, well, we're going to have a plate for you. We're going to have a cup for you. We're going to have a seat for you. Nobody's going to fill it. And if you come, you come. And if you don't, you don't. But I don't want to hear that I didn't invite you to my house anymore. So that night, Ivy showed up on a Thursday night, and we had a great time. And Ivy's a great Christian woman. And she told me as she was leaving, now next week you have to come to darts with me. And I found myself at the middle table, and I was there for probably 6 to 8 weeks, and God led me to a back table where a gentleman was sitting, and his name was Benny. And Benny said, would you, I just lost my wife last year, would you pray with me? And so I prayed with Benny, and I started to move my table from where I used to sit over to Benny's table. And as I sat there, I realized that people in the bar would wait till everybody had left my table. This was a table all the way back in the back corner. And I found that as long as 2 or 3 people were there, there was no talk about God. But as soon as people would see me by myself, several people started coming up to me and saying, hey, I got this going on. Would you pray for me? And so I said, yeah, let's pray. And they couldn't believe that I was praying with them right in the bar.
I think the reputation from some of the people in the community was it was more of a rowdy kind of spot. You know, you don't want to have your child in there. It's a bar. And that's just never the way I saw it. I've always felt like it needed to be more of a family-friendly place. The community doesn't need to see it as a bar. So I was talking to one of the regulars one night, and her name was Miss Ivy, and Miss Ivy was on the Dart League on Thursdays, and I said, Ivy, we have this pool room in the back, and sometimes people have a baby shower back there or something. Maybe we could get a youth group, a church youth group out here. Maybe we could get a chosen watch party. Maybe we could get something. I want to bring God and salt and light into where I'm planted. This is where I want to be. And I knew Ivy and I had the same, same sentiment, same background.
Well, one night out back, there's a burn barrel, and I found myself out there because I wanted to be among the people. And there was a biker there, and his name was Chris. And Chris had the regular MC, the 3-patch MC Club vest. He has a beard, and at that time he would braid it, and he had a mohawk, and he was just a scary character. And I had been affiliated with motorcycle clubs, and I know what people in motorcycle clubs do, especially if it's an MC. That night, I found myself one-on-one with Chris out by the burn barrel.
Brother Tony was come walking out. Where you go to church? And I said, no, I don't go to church. I quit going to church. I'll never go to church again. I give up on church. He said, well, why don't you come to my church? I said, no. He said, it ain't the church, it's the people. He said, I'll tell you what. He said, if you come to my church, anybody ever makes you feel uncomfortable, I'll make them leave. I said, yeah, right. He said, I promise you, anybody ever makes you feel uncomfortable, I'll make them leave. I said, okay, whatever.
I've never had a good relationship with churches. I've buried 2 children. I've had a whole church never even show up to bring food or anything, that I was a member of.
He said, give my church a try. Okay, I'll give it a try. So I talked to my wife. We decided, okay, we'll give it a try. And we walked in the door.
No, we didn't.
Well, my wife walked in the door. And I couldn't make it in. My heart started pounding. I couldn't breathe.
Well, one Sunday I seen his wife Donna walk in the door. This was several weeks after, so it wasn't like he came the first week. So when I seen Donna, I said, "Hey, where's Chris?" And she pointed to the door, and I walked out the door. And I remember Chris was bent over, and he had his vest on with his motorcycle club colors. 'Cause that's another thing he told me around the barrel. He was looking for reasons to not come to church. And he said, "Well, you know, if I come, I got to wear my colors." And I said, "Well, bring your colors. You're going to be fine there." But when I walked out, he was sobbing and uncontrollably breathing. He was having a panic attack. And I just lifted him up, and we embraced and we hugged, and that just created a bond.
Pastor Tony come walking through that door, and he grabbed me, and we hugged each other, and he said, "I got you."
And I don't know how long it was. It seemed like hours, but we just held each other and cried together. And I said, "I've got you, and you're going to be fine." And Chris at that time was sitting on the back row in the corner, so I knew he was having a tough time. So as a pastor, I'm usually up on the front row, but that week I just stood by him and put my arm around him until it was time for me to preach. Well, Chris and Donna have assimilated into our church, and they have been coming regularly. And probably about 9 months to almost a year ago, I came in, and Chris regularly, when he comes in, the first thing he does is we hug, and instead of hugging, he turned his back on me, and I was like, "What's going on?" And the patches were removed from the back of his vest, and he said, "I've disaffiliated with that." And he told me about some really bad things that were going on in that motorcycle club, and although at that time he felt like he was making the choice to leave, I believe that God was moving him to leave that club. And he would still wear his vest for weeks and weeks and weeks, but then eventually Chris quit wearing the vest altogether, and he doesn't wear it to church anymore. Now he dresses up in a suit sometimes, and it's beautiful to see. He and his wife Donna have really grown spiritually.
I've always wanted to have a real relationship with God. Mm-hmm. And forgive me for saying it like this, I'm trying to get closer. I'm getting there. But not a BS relationship with God. I'm trying to get there. All right? I want a real relationship with God.
We're not doing it correctly. It should be that way. We should be welcoming people into our churches that are afraid to be there. There's no point in being light if there's no darkness in that room, and there's no point in being salt if people around you aren't eating bland food.
I'm part of a church that accepts real people into the church.